Welcome to another edition of the CDG BizCast. I'm your host, Christian Gonzalez, co-owner of Creativity Design Group, a digital marketing firm in Houston, Texas. In this two-part episode, we are going to discuss how you can turn angry customers into happy customers and even discuss some real-world examples. Joining me today are my lifestyle expert, Justin, my consumer guest in the United Kingdom, Lauren, and for the first time ever, with 11 and a half years of retail experience, please welcome retail professional Dana. In today's episode, we are going to be discussing some different ways that you can make angry customers happy again. This is a very important customer service skill that everyone should have, and if you are a business owner, you need to understand that you're always going to experience an angry customer. There's no way around it. You can't please everybody. You may have a lot of good reviews online, and you may have served several happy customers. But there will come a time where you're going to run into one that is going to be so angry that you won't know how to handle them. And that's what we're going to discuss in today's episode. It's important to understand that it's never too late to try to make things better. And, of course, it's never too late to learn something new. Handling bad customers opens doors to many new learning experiences, many that you will take with you during your journey as a business owner. It's important to have a growth mindset that will allow you to learn by experience, and sometimes you have to learn the hard way. This will help you serve your customers better, and you'll know what to do next time you have a problematic customer who is causing trouble and is just so angry to the point where instead of not knowing what to do with them, you'll be able to handle them just like that. So to start off the show, Dana, I would like you to tell us about your experience in the retail business and what jobs you have held, what positions you've held, and some of your experiences that you've dealt with in terms of having dissatisfied customers. Welcome to the show.
Certainly. Thank you. It's good to be here. So I have worked retail, many positions, many different companies, types of companies since March of 2011. I started as a cashier at a department store called Kohl's, and eventually requested to be cross-trained for customer service. That's where all the returns and all that good stuff was held. Any issues, customer service handled it. Any returns, customer service handled it. Most even exchanges, though we could do it at the register, customer service handled it. So I have worked as a cross-trained associate, cashier, customer service, up until, maybe about 2015, 2016, when I was permanently placed in customer service, until my end of employment there, which was in February of 2020. I have dealt with some crazy customers. Unfortunately, they are difficult to deal with sometimes, and it does test one's patience. The best thing to do is just remain calm. Express your, sympathizing and empathizing of the situation, listen to their needs and wants, and try to accommodate them as best as you can. Sometimes there are situations where we were not able to help the customer and thus needing the manager. After I left Kohl's, about 6 weeks later, I had started at CVS Pharmacy at the front end. So I was pretty much doing everything a front end associate would do at a drugstore, which was ringing up purchases, answering phones, doing the returns, doing the restocks, unloading the truck merchandise. There were days when I would get crazy customers again, hectic, angry, upset. We didn't have anything on the shelf. It was the day before truck. It was truck day. We didn't have everything unloaded by the end of the day. I tried to do my best to say, unfortunately, we didn't get it in today. At that point, we just kind of have to bluff and, because let's just face it, the first aid items were literally 14 to 15, maybe 20 at the most totes of merchandise. So there was no way we could actually go through it all. At one point, when the customer knew we actually had truck day come in because of the fact that there were a lot of totes out with the U-boats that we brought them out on. So we'd have to unfortunately we didn't get it in, or we could even say, well, we could check back tomorrow or later in the later in the evening. We close at such and such time. A particular location closed at 11 p.m. So Eastern time. So we could say, you check back later in the evening. Maybe we did get it in. We just didn't know. Something along those lines. Try to make the customer happy, but at the same time, try to avoid going through 20 totes of stuff when they're piled up 5 high. And most of them are heavy. After leaving CVS in November of 2021, I started at ShopRite, which is a grocery store up here in the Northeast. I started with them at the end of January of this year, 22. So I started as a cashier. Yes, I have had some difficult customers, but again, you just have to remain calm, remain courteous, listen to them. There were times that they'd ask me something that I just didn't know where it was. So I would actually say to the customer, well, let's ask somebody who does. This way we can go find it together. About, maybe 2 months in, I started working the online grocery fulfillment center, which ShopRite calls order, pickup, deliver. I started working there and I got to know the store much, much better than just working as a cashier. Yes, there were still some questions asked. We were being timed for the order fulfillment, that is. And yes, we'd have questions being asked to us along the way. I had my ShopRite shirt on. I have my name badge on. So obviously, yes, I worked at ShopRite. Customers would ask questions and we'd be trying to fulfill an order. We'd have to direct them as best as possible. If we didn't know, we'd bring them to somebody who did. So with that said, it helped me get to know the store much, much better than just being a regular cashier and being stationed in one area. Also, since working order, pickup, deliver, I have also had the pleasure of learning the grocery department and the dairy department, restocking those shelves so I know more information as to where things are. With that said, grocery department, you'd think it's a grocery store, everything's grocery. Not quite. Grocery is your more shelf-stable merchandise, like, Apple and Eve apple juice, Welch's juices, believe it or not, pet food. Now you're also talking Kraft mac and cheese boxes, ramen, anything you could think of, pastas, dry pastas, pasta sauce, teriyaki sauce, things along those lines that are just shelf stable. Also, paper goods like napkins, paper towels, paper dishes, garbage bags, some things along those lines. So it helped me get to know the store a lot better. This way I could better accommodate the customer. I've had some customers come up to me while restocking in grocery, and they said to me, I'm looking everywhere and I don't seem to find this particular item. So the particular item was a type of clothing dye. I said, well, let's go check with somebody who knows. This way we can find out together, like what I mentioned before. So even then, as the associate, you can then have that knowledge as to where the item is. So you don't have to, ask another associate or whatnot. So I actually saw the courtesy desk woman. She said, oh, such and such item is in that aisle 10. Okay. So I brought the customer over. They were waiting in a different aisle. I brought the customer over to aisle 10 and said, here you go. This is exactly where it is. That also visualization for me, seeing the item and its location helps me remember in the future where the item is should somebody else ask for it. So I'm still working at ShopRite and I love being cross-trained. I really do. I believe that management should try to cross-train a lot of, if not all of their associates that are able to be cross-trained. Now, ShopRite is a union, so there are two different unions that are working in tandem at that location. There's one union that is in charge of seafood, meat department, deli, and bakery, and then the union for everyone else. So at which point I could literally be cross-trained anywhere except those 4 locations because I'm in a different union. I personally believe from the associate standpoint that as the one on your show, Christian, from an associate standpoint, and not the only one who's cross-trained at that location anyways, I personally believe that management it would be in their best interest to cross-train their associates. So this way they could better help the customers. This way the associates, even if they're just cashiers primarily, they would actually know. And if they're not willing to be cross-trained, at least give them the knowledge and the layout of the store. So in case somebody comes over to a cashier and says, hey, what aisle is Raid in? They can immediately, the bug spray, Raid. They can immediately say, in our store in particular, aisle 11, left-hand side, all the way at the end. So having that knowledge of the store, even if you're just a cashier, you could definitely better help the customer and make them happy so that you actually know where the item is.
Yes, I agree with you 100% on that. It's important for at least for the frontline employees, such as these positions you just mentioned, to know the layout of the store and know where everything is. And if you're a service-based business, every employee in a service-based business should know the mechanics of each service that the company offers to the public. For example, if you are an AC company, you don't need all your employees to know how to fix an air conditioning unit, right? But they should at least know what the services require. They should know their process of how they serve the customer. What is their 4-step or 5-step process they take whenever they go visit a customer? That way, if somebody comes to one of them and asks them a question, they'll be able to answer it right away, even though they may have never touched an AC unit in their life, or they may have never went to a customer's job site in their life, but they still know how the company operates. It's all about knowing how your company operates internally, knowing your products and services in and out, and knowing what to do when a customer asks you a specific question. And when it comes to having a customer who is angry, the first thing you need to do, and this is the most important thing to remember, think about why they're upset. Don't just simply try to send them away so you're not on the front line of their anger anymore. Find out what they want. Find out specifically why they're upset. And when you talk to them, apologize to them first for their inconvenience, but don't just simply say, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, because that's cliche. Everybody says that. You need to truly show that you are sorry and that you want to make things right. You need to tell them that you understand how frustrated they are and understand why they need such and such problem rectified. You don't want to just use cliches and try to push them off onto somebody else. And yeah, it might require that you need to get a manager to truly help them out because they're asking for help in a department that you don't work in. But still, show the customers, regardless of that you are there. You want to make things right. You don't want them to be any more upset than they have to be. That you're willing to work with them, get them on the right track again.
Exactly. And in certain circumstances, you can actually diffuse a situation, before a manager has to get involved. In a situation where I had a customer on the phone at Order Pickup Deliver who was extremely upset about, I don't even remember what the situation was a while ago, but regardless, she was audibly upset that something had gone wrong with her order, and I tried what I was able to do on my end as an associate, on the associate level, to rectify her issue. And I didn't use the whole cliche thing, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. That's just extremely cliche, as you say, Christian. I said, I'm sorry you're having this how did I put this? I'm sorry you're having an issue. Let me see what I can do to help you. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, I was not able to help her. So I said, I apologize. I am unable to help. However, I do know somebody who may be able to help you. If you'd like, I can put you on a brief hold and get them involved. Not involved, but I said, if you'd like, I can put you on a brief hold and get them on the line for you. to better assist you.
That's the right way to handle it. That is the professional way that everyone should handle a customer like this. It's also important to, while you're handling these customers, to show empathy towards them. Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to agree with the customer because they may be wrong about a lot of things you don't know, but it is important to understand how they feel and even show them that you are able to relate to them on a personal level. It can be very difficult to have a civilized conversation with a customer that is just outright angry, or they're just simply upset. Maybe they're not necessarily angry, but they're upset to the point to where you can't really talk to them in a civilized manner, where they're just talking over you and trying to express their displeasure at extreme levels. And if you can show them that you understand how they feel and you can be empathetic towards them, it does help de-escalate the issue better. It shows them that you are truly ready to put in your 110% to help them. You want to de-escalate the issue as much as you can, get them to a point to where they feel calm, and most importantly, that you want to point them in the right direction and get their problem taken care of ASAP.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. And what a lot of customers, generally speaking, don't really understand or even realize is that on an associate's day off, they're customers too. So we as associates may have our own issue while as a customer.
Us employees, us business owners, we're people too, just like them. We live everyday lives just like them. We shop at the same stores that we work at, or even at our competitors sometimes.
Yes, I have actually shopped at Stop and Shop in my shopper uniform. So yeah, and they're a competition.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that.
I shopped at Arby's in my Wendy's uniform.
Well, at one point, Arby's and Wendy's were owned by the same company. You were probably working there before that ever happened.
What year was this, Christian, when they were owned by the same company?
They were owned by the same company from 2008 through 2011. That's when they decided the marriage wasn't working and they sold Arby's off and kept Wendy's.
I had stopped working for Wendy's at that point because I worked for Wendy's from 2000 to 2007.
You left right before the buyout happened. Yeah, Justin, since you've worked at Wendy's, did you ever get to work on the front line and handle customers, or was most of your work just working in the kitchen, cooking?
I spent most of my time in the back doing the cleaning. My boss actually would schedule me overtime on days when they knew the scheduled inspections were coming up, because they knew that every time I would clean something that they would pass inspection on whatever it was I had been scheduled to clean that day.
Did you ever witness any of your coworkers who worked on the front lines or at the drive-through window handle upset customers?
I've seen the management have to handle certain customers that really, in my opinion, should have been kicked out of the store. Yeah. Because of the way they were behaving.
See, I've been talking about how to de-escalate situations, but that can only work if the customer is willing to do their part and listen instead of rant and rave. If they can't handle themselves in a civilized manner, then they've got to go. In fact, I have a story to share over something that I saw a few years ago at my neighborhood CVS. One time, I was in there just buying a few little things. I wasn't going to be in there very long. I just had to grab a few things, and I saw this crazy guy. He was raging like crazy. I don't know what he was upset about because I wasn't listening to the conversation. And he was yelling at the cashier. He was threatening to pull out his knife and even beat him to a bloody pulp. And while the cashier was handling this crazy idiot that was making all these death threats towards him, the manager wrung me out while he was handling him. And off to the side, I said to the manager, "Why aren't you calling the police?" And she goes, "Don't worry about it. He'll be able to handle him." She had so much confidence in this cashier of hers that he might be able to basically take his body out to dry rather than call the cops. And it just blew my mind. You're right, Justin. When people start acting like that, they need to be kicked out the door and they need to have the cops call them, especially if they are threatening bodily harm to you. That's when you have to call the cops. Now, they didn't call the cops in this situation, and I'll never understand why. I just don't get it. Some people think they are just so entitled to get whatever they want, because I've had my own share of idiots who wanted free stuff, and let me tell you, you need to be able to talk to people in a civilized manner. You need to stay calm no matter what. You need to maintain a very calm tone of voice because it looks professional on your part. You never want to stoop to the level of the aggressor. If you have an angry customer who is just cussing you out and they're yelling at you, you never want to stoop to their level, because now you look unprofessional and it reflects badly on your organization as a whole. And then, of course, if you're a business owner, you might have more leeway with this. But if you work for somebody and your manager doesn't like it, guess what? You're fired.
And Christian, I also just remembered a time that you were just mentioning about the customer at CVS, your local CVS. I remembered a time, this was actually holiday season 2012. So I was still, 2012? Yes, 2012. So I was still working at Kohl's at this point. I was a cashier, and I had a woman, two women come up to my register, and the promotion at that time, no longer a thing, just to make known, but at that particular time in December of 2012, there was a promotion for credit card, the store card applications, Kohl's charge, that regardless of if you got approved or not, you would get a 30% discount. I will note again, this is no longer a thing as far as I know. I have not worked for Kohl's since 2020, so they may have changed that policy again, but regardless. There was a customer and her friend came over to my register. At that time, the discount was still applied on toys. That I know is no longer a thing. But it was around Christmas time. They had a bunch of toys, clothing, Christmas gifts, holiday gifts, whatever. And the woman said, I'd like to apply for the Kohl's charge. I don't think I'd get through though. I knew I got through on my end, on my Kohl's charge about 14 months prior. And I didn't really think I would get through. So I said, that's okay. We'll definitely try it out. Regardless if you get through or not, we will give you the discount. So I had her go through the application process. At that time, the application process for the Kohl's charge was to run a credit or debit card through the system, fill out some information on a piece of paper, name, signature, pretty much things like that, acknowledging that you do understand the terms and conditions of the credit card, and present your ID. Now, this customer in particular, she was shady from the get-go. So when I finally came time for me to take her ID, which she willingly gave me, by the way, she then, I had the application information pulled up on my screen with pertinent important personal details like social security number X'd out. Only the last four were visible, as it should be. I looked, and also income is also X'd out, so we don't see that information on our end. So I looked at the ID, and I looked at the screen. I looked at the ID again, and I'm thinking to myself, hold on, something's not right. So the woman explains to me, I'm in bankruptcy. I'm using my brother's card. Okay, red flag, number one. I said, I kind of knew something was going up. I have family in the justice system, so I kind of knew what to look out for. I said to the woman, I'm sorry, just excuse me really quick. I just need to verify something with my supervisor. So I called my supervisor. At Kohl's, they're called 27. Front-end supervisor. So I called the 27 over to the men's side register, which is where I was at that time. Two sides registers, one women's registers, one's men's registers. Men's registers also was next to customer service. So I called the 27 over, and this woman literally started screaming at me. She was using every explicit in the book. I'm going to censor myself, but she's like, why are you calling your supervisor? I've never had any trouble at any other Kohl's before. Why here? Why am I having this trouble here? So as you can see, she's getting visibly angry at me for calling her supervisor. My supervisor rather, and so I have a shaky voice in the intercom trying to call the supervisor over. Two supervisors ran over immediately, one of which played a game with this particular customer in question. Once she came over, she locked eyes with the customer, walked around customer service. There were two entrances, one in the back by the men's department and one in the front by the registers. So she went through the front entrance, around, said something in her walkie, which I later found out was, watch out for register 11. Dana's having a hard time with the customer. Went behind customer service and talked to our LP officer, loss prevention officer, aka security. So I noticed something immediately. Her friend is like, let's just go. It's not worth it. So we cancel the application, void the transaction. The two ladies go. I sign off the register. I turn around, visibly upset. Remember, this is my second holiday season working for them. Never had an issue like that before. I turn around and look at my coworker, who's a backup register associate from the men's department. I said, I couldn't even get words out. He says, just go. I got this. So I actually was stopped by another customer who witnessed this whole thing transpire, and she said, you did not deserve that treatment. You did great. You did everything you needed to do. Apparently, what the woman was trying to do was commit identity theft at my register and try to get away with it. I caught it. So, long story short, the customer, before leaving, said that she would never shop at any Kohl's again, including this one. Again, censoring myself with her explicits. So, what happened in 2013, around seasonal time? But I go on break and I see none other than those two women. I immediately texted one of the two supervisors who were on duty that day. She said, OMG, thank you for letting me know. Contacted the other supervisor, the one who played the game with the customer, because once that supervisor went behind customer service, that woman started her antics again. He started her antics again, yelling at me like it was my fault and everything. So apparently, the second supervisor, the one who played the game, called the store. Both of the ladies were off duty that day, and alerted loss prevention. I was going on my break at that time, and alerted loss prevention that ex-women were in the spotted in the seasonal department. They had an issue with the cashier last year. Cashier called it in to the other supervisor, and those two ladies have since been banned from Kohl's.
Perfect.
They should go to jail, in my opinion.
I agree. They should. The only way they could go to jail would be if they set foot on Kohl's property again, since they've been banned.
A coworker of mine actually witnessed and stop at ShopRite. A customer was trying to get out of the store with close to $300 worth of items in the meat department. So you're talking beef, chicken, porks, all raw meats. And the total had been close to $300. And she goes over to the customer. So the store goes, I wasn't witness to this. I heard about this elsewhere by somebody else. But she goes over to the customer and says, are you going to pay for that? Or are you just going to walk out?
No, literally put security boxes on their steaks because some idiots would just go in and steal the steaks all the time.
Oh, wow.
So every time you go there, and you want a steak, it's got a security box on it. It's so annoying.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot.
That makes sense, though. Oh, wow.
I've seen that quite a bit, too. A lot of general items that normally don't cost too much, they have risen in cost due to inflation, and people are shoplifting them more. Stores are going the extra mile to protect these assets from getting stolen, and meats are a hot item that are being stolen right now. It is important to remember that when a customer is making a huge stink in the middle of the store over something so trivial, chances are they are up to no good. They may be trying to scam your store out of a lot of money, or they might have some sort of shoplifting scheme going on. And this is also true with employees, too. Usually when employees tend to be verbally abusive with others, it's usually because they have something to hide.
I know my local Walmart that the USB cords of all types were getting stolen so often that they now have to be authorized and paid for before you can pay for your other items right there in the electronics department, because they're kept under lock and key with the batteries and other electronics now.
Well, I don't know the state bit, but some shops, especially here near where I live, in Trago Mills, on the when you leave, there's always a security guard at the door checking your receipt and what you've got in your bag, which I think is good.
That sounds a lot like Costco on our end in the States, where there's always at least one, maybe two, even I've seen up to 3 associates at the door who have to check the receipt, make sure you got everything, and then what they do is they have a marker in their hand, and then they draw a line on the receipt, so you're clear to go. Once they notate that you have everything, they draw a line on the receipt stating, yes, you have everything, you're good to go. Everything you paid for, that is.
They do that at Sam's Club, too. All the big wholesale, big boxes do that. Walmart does that.
I'm sure BJ's does. I've just never shopped at BJ's before, but I'm sure they do that too.
Most likely. I've never been there myself either because we don't have any around here, but it's most likely a common practice. Now, how this ties in with angry customers is a fact that these loss prevention associates or these general associates that they plant by the front door often do make customers angry because they feel like that they're being accused of stealing. Now, they have to do it to check to make sure that you truly aren't stealing, but some people take it a little too personally, and they do end up getting into huge fights and screaming matches with the associate for simply trying to check their receipt. I would probably say that this is probably the second biggest hot spot in the store where you'll see angry customers. It's either going to be at the cash registers when they're checking out, or it's going to be when they're trying to leave the store and they're having the receipts checked, because some people do take that too personally.
I've also seen angry customers at customer service and or courtesy, whatever they call it at the location you're at. So there's 3 hotspots, if I may. There's the customer service, courtesy desk, leaving the store, and at the cashiers.
Right. In service-based businesses, that number one hotspot's going to be on the phone. When somebody is displeased with, for example, their phone service or their cable TV service, they're going to call up the customer service number just to cuss out the customer service agent that picks up, who, might I add, has nothing to do with your issue. They're just venting towards that person simply because they're part of the company and they have no one else to yell at.
I've done that before on a consumer end.
I'll be honest, I've been that way too.
I've had to argue with tech support. Yeah, I've had to argue with tech support myself. I remember when I was first getting my current landline started up, that it took about 10 to 15 phone calls, each of them about 2 hours long, to actually get my landline service issues resolved.
I've had to contact UPS customer service a few times, one of which I had ordered something for a friend, and they had on the shipping label, which was not UPS's issue at all, but the company I ordered from, their address with my name, and clearly that was incorrect. And furthermore, I could not get through to somebody who understood what I was trying to get at.
They probably understood you, they were just jamming you.
Or they probably understood it, but just couldn't do a thing about it because the item was not deliverable, but yet they could do something about it. They could have written in the system, send this item properly, because I remember this particular friend of mine said, UPS just drove by, but nothing came to my door. I said, okay, what's going on? So I looked at the label and everything. Actually, it wasn't even on the tracking information. I called UPS and checked the tracking information, and they said, wait, okay, are you so-and-so? I said, no, I'm the one on the billing information. The recipient, the shipping information is somebody else entirely. Well, they thought that I had lived at that particular quote-unquote apartment complex, and clearly I live in a different state altogether. So at that point, they had my name, their address, would not drop off the package because I was not on the apartment listing of the names on the apartment list. I'm like, that just made absolutely 0 sense. And you either deliver the package tomorrow, because tomorrow was a business day, so either you deliver the package tomorrow or I will get the FTC involved, the Federal Trade Commission. Well, if I'm not mistaken, the package was delivered the next day. Late, but the next day.
Perfect. At least the issue got resolved and they were more than willing to take care of you. I had a similar issue myself where one of the domain names for one of the websites that I was handling at the time got renewed without my knowledge. I no longer wanted this domain name anymore, but they still renewed it anyway. They told me they updated their terms and conditions to where you can't cancel anymore after it's been renewed after a certain time. It had only been a few days. I called them. I demanded a supervisor. At first I was friendly, but when they gave me this news that I was never informed about, I stopped being friendly and I started being more brash with them. They contacted their supervisor and they got it taken care of. I was refunded, but that's not good customer service when you're not telling your customers about these changes in their policies.
Send out an email or a mailer or notice or something of an update in terms and conditions legally.
I would
Legally,
say
I think
so.
they're required to do that 45 days before any such changes are authorized under federal law. So that would be a Federal Trade Commission violation by that particular company.
One thing that's important to do when you're handling angry customers, and this applies if you know them by name, use their name, address the customer by name. It makes things more personal. Now, it makes things more personal. It does show that you care and that you acknowledge them as a real customer, but you got to use their name sparingly at the same time, because if you use it too much, it does get a bit awkward and creepy. And it's best not to do it too much. When you can address them by name, you're getting more personal. It's like, we know who this customer is. We want to help them. They're not just a number. They're a living, breathing person that we want to help. That's important right there.
Now, Christian, what do you do in the event that you do not know their name?
Then that rule doesn't apply. When you do know their name, and this is especially true in a service business, try to use it. If you're working in retail, at a cash register or at the customer service desk, and you don't know any of the people going through your line, then that rule doesn't apply.
Just be polite as possible.
Right. You'll want to be very polite no matter how ugly the customer is towards you, no matter how hostile they're being towards you. You've got to make sure you're always speaking in a calm voice and you show empathy. You show them that you're ready and willing to go the extra mile to turn their frown into a smile. And it's important to try to build and maintain trust between you and the customer. Remember, when you work a cash register or any position in the store, you represent the organization as a whole, regardless of how high up the corporate ladder you are. You represent the organization as a whole, and therefore you need to make sure you treat your customers right. If you're rude to a customer, but they're not rude to you, then that person is going to think that the entire chain of stores you work for is full of rude people, and that they foster that type of culture. No, you want to build and maintain trust. You don't want to damage your company's entire reputation by not showing that you're willing to help them out. The first and most important thing you need to do at this point is show them that you truly 110% understand what their problem is, why they're angry, and that you get to know your customer. Get to know everything that led up to why they're upset. They can explain. They might be angry. They'll explain the series of events that they're dealing with that led up to them being so hot-headed, so upset.
When you genuinely listen, when they understand you actually care about the problem and want to correct it, that will go further for the reputation of your company than anything else you can do.
That's exactly right. It also helps when you tell your customer things like, we messed up, or this is our fault, especially if it was the company's fault. Own up to your mistake. And Dana, you gave a very good point earlier, and I just want to reiterate this. It's important to use positive scripting, like saying, instead of saying, I don't know, tell them, let me find out for you, or let me check with my coworker so we can find out. That's the best way
Or let's go check with somebody who may know, so this way we can find out together.
Right? That's exactly right. You don't want to just say, I don't know, and then brush them off. That will reflect as a whole on the company that the employees do not care about the customer. So it's always important to go the extra mile.
When I was working for Walmart in their frozen department on night shift, I made sure that I kept an accurate inventory of what was in the back room, so that when people would ask me in my native department, do you have this, that I was able to say yes or no. I was rarely asked to cover other departments.
Exactly what we do as well, Justin. Good point. At ShopRite, I have been asked numerous times to check if something was in the back. Well, I said, all right, because this product was on the shelf. I said, they asked me, do you have it in the back? I said, well, let me go double check for you. I'll be right back. And the customer, say, for example, I'm in aisle 8, and the customer says, okay, well, I'll be over in aisle 10 when you get back. I said, all right, no problem. I'll meet you back in aisle 10. Well, I go to the back room, I see if we have the item, and regardless of if we have the item or not, I always went back to aisle 10 because that's where the customer said that they were going to be, not wait for them in aisle 8. I always went to where they were going to be.
That's the right way to do it. We're also stressing the importance of being cross-trained in other departments, because Justin worked in the frozen foods department and the stock room wasn't even his responsibility, yet he still went the extra mile to learn what was in the stock room, so that way he knew he could serve a customer properly if they asked him about something.
I actually cross-trained on all the modules for my pay grade at Walmart. So if it had been legal for me to do so at 3 o'clock in the morning, if needed, I could. It wasn't legal to do it on the particular shift I worked, because I worked 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. 5 nights a week at Walmart. But if it were legal to do so, I would have actually been able to be pulled out of frozen temporarily to sell a hunting or fishing license in that store. I was also, at the time, alcohol, tobacco, and firearm sale certified, so I could actually legally sell a weapon at that time of day, provided the customer could pass the background check. Which means that I was making sure that I was cross-trained on everything they let me cross-train on from the training modules in the back of the store, which you're required to do in order to stay on as an employee.
You basically wanted to be a jack of all trades at the store, at least within the positions that were in your pay grade.
Exactly, because I spent probably 60 to 80% of my non-rental income in that store when I was working there. And as such, I made sure to memorize the layout of the store. And usually, there were a couple of departments I didn't know, but 80% of the time, you could ask me a question about something in that store, and I could tell you not only what department, but sometimes what aisle and what shelf in what aisle it would be on.
I've done the same thing, Justin, as you. Because I was able to be cross-trained in working for grocery, I would be able to say, customer asks me, okay, where is such and such item? I say, actually, let's just use chicken broth, for example. Okay, they're in the front of the store. Okay, where is the chicken broth? Aisle 8, right-hand side, 3/4 of the way down. And that way I knew exactly where the item was. And when they went to aisle 8, right-hand side, 3/4 of the way down, they'd find the chicken broth.
Many of the local stores in my area could sure use employees like you guys, because one of these stores, I never see anybody who truly likes their job. They just seem grumpy and rude, and they don't want to help. They just go there for the paycheck. They don't give a rat's behind about customer service or being helpful. Let me tell you, ShopRite and Walmart should consider themselves blessed to have had y'all on the team at one point.
Walmart I will not shop at. There is a reason I do not shop at Walmart. In my opinion, their customer service has gone extremely downhill.
I don't disagree with you on that one. Yeah, just reiterates what I said earlier. They are not known for having Chick-fil-A style customer service, if you know what I mean. They are known for having employees who are moody, who do not care about their job, and they just go for the paycheck. And if you try to ask them where something is, a lot of them, most of the time, are going to tell you, I don't know, and just walk away. They will just tell you that they don't know, basically breaking the rule that I was stressing earlier about showing empathy and showing that you care, and just walking away. Sometimes they'll tell you, if you ask them a question about where a certain item is, they'll say, I don't know, it's not my department. I don't even know the employee I'm talking to, so I don't know what department you work in. For all I know, you could be a cashier just browsing the back of the store. I don't know.
For all you know, you could be a manager you're speaking to.
It could be a manager. It's one thing when customers are rude, but when the employees are rude to the customers, well, that's going to be a whole podcast episode of its own later on in the future, because I've got stories to share about that too. But going back to angry customers, it's important to remember that when we deal with customers who are beyond dissatisfied or upset in even the slightest amount, you have to remember, this is business. This is not personal. You don't want to take these customers personally. If they're being rude to you, don't take it as a personal insult. They're not exactly angry at you. They are angry at the product or service that they're dealing with, or they're angry at the organization. Whatever beef they're having is not with you directly. They don't know you. They're just venting towards you because you're the first agent of the company that they talk to. The main reason why a customer will be angry is because they have an expectation that was promised after they purchased a product or service. They experience a problem and they want answers. The most dangerous thing about taking angry customers personally is that then your own emotions will start coming into play. You'll start getting angry with the customer. You won't de-escalate the situation. You'll make yourself look unprofessional. You'll make the entire organization you work for look unprofessional. You'll most likely destroy your own career, because when you get fired, you're probably not going to be hireable anywhere else if they decide to call your old company back for a reference, because your boss is going to tell you, we fired him or her because they cussed out a customer, because they yelled at a customer.
Which reminds me of another story I had to deal with. Goodness. I was working at CVS, and I was actually helping out at the pharmacy. I was legally able to work pharmacy pickup because I had passed the drug test. Mm-hmm. So at that point, they let me work in. I actually requested to help out in pharmacy pickup line, because at that point, now you're talking, oh goodness, August, September 2021, the line for pharmacy pickup was just zigzagging through the actual zigzag line and down aisle 15, down to aisle 7 toward the front of the store. So we lost a lot of customers in pharmacy from that. They transferred to a different location, fine, whatever. But there was this one customer in particular. I had to deal with her 3 days in a row. So the first day, let me just preface with in our pharmacy, their pharmacy system, there are 20 prescriptions per page of inventory, or not inventory, but you're talking like production. So there's 3 production pages. There's QP, which is your queue of production. There's QV, which is your queue of verification that the pharmacist needs to verify, like, for example, controlled substances, things like that nature need to go into QV. Your typical everyday prescription cold medicine, that can go into QP. Then there was QI, which had insurance issues or anything of that sort. QP alone, there's 20 prescriptions per page per queue. In QP alone, at that time, we had over 90 pages. Because we were so short-staffed, we only had one pharmacist at that time, plus the pharmacy manager, plus about 2 or 3 pharmacists on loan from other locations throughout the company. And of the technicians, we only had maybe 5 throughout the whole day at some point in time. Hired 5 throughout the day at some point in time. So I remember taking it upon myself, asking my boss at the front end level, say, hey, you're the store manager. I want to learn to help pharmacy pickup line. He said, all right, schedule a drug test and we'll get you in. So I got the drug test in, and there was this one customer who just completely threw me for a loop. She had her doctor put in a prescription for her for whatever it was at that time, and it's not important what it is, but the doctor put in a prescription for her. Let's just say this was Friday. And Friday she comes over and the prescription's not ready. However, I said, well, let me expedite it for you, so hopefully we can get it by, as soon as possible. She says, all right, I'll come back. I didn't want to make any time promises because I knew we were so swamped. I said, we'll get it to you as soon as possible. She said, okay, I'll come back tomorrow. Well, I had the displeasure of seeing her again the next day, Saturday. So she says, well, is my prescription ready now? I looked and I said, unfortunately not. I'm going to expedite it again. We'll get it to you as soon as possible. Again, not making any promises with respect to time. You just couldn't, especially when you had like 2 pharmacy technicians plus a pharmacist plus me working the pickup line by myself. So at that point, Sunday comes around, I'm working pickup, and I'm in my front end uniform. So I'm in my red shirt with the white heart on the back and the word CVS on the side. That's the front end uniform. And somebody in line said, you do know she's front end, right? And I actually heard that. And I said to a woman, I appreciate you acknowledging my shirt. However, I am cross-trained. She immediately shut up from embarrassment. But the woman from the previous 2 days said, I've been waiting 3 days. I can't keep having a babysitter come to my house and watch my child while you lazy SOBs literally have not done my prescription yet. I've been waiting 3 days for this thing, and I lost it at that point. I tried to keep my emotions in check, but at that point, it felt like an attack. So I snapped at her. Unfortunately, I talked to the managers, both in pharmacy and front end, and I explained my situation. But I said to her, look, we're doing all we can to help all of our customers, not just you. You think you're entitled to have this prescription ready when you think it's right to have this prescription ready, when we are working our butts off trying to get yours, next person line, and all the other CVS Scotch Plains prescription customers ready. And at that point, she just shut her mouth. I started shaking, and I turned around, I apologized to the pharmacy manager, and I said, I need to go to the break room. He said, go, it's fine. He ended up, at that point, pharmacy manager ended up coming to me and saying in the break room, I'm sorry, this was my fault. I did not teach my associates how to diffuse situations, how to identify and diffuse the situation before it got worse. So he took responsibility for something that, yes, as a manager of a department or whatever, pharmacy needs to be taken, responsibility for. And he took it upon himself to then teach his pharmacy staff how to identify and then thus, if needed, diffuse a situation so nothing like that again. Unfortunately, he has since left the company, and the other full-time pharmacist took over as pharmacy manager, but it is now run a lot more smoothly than it was.
That's a very unfortunate type of customer that everyone will eventually run into. Whether you run a business or you work in a business where you have to face different people every day, you're always going to run into some sort of Karen that is going to just create all this trouble. I mean, she made a lot of smart aleck comments. She doesn't work for the store. She doesn't understand the process that y'all go through to try to get things going. Yet she still acted like that she knew more about your job than you did. In a situation like this, it's important to remember, not only should you not take it personally, because that will destroy your own well-being, your spirits will be brought down. But when you have a customer like that, always try to talk to them using positive language. Because when you use negative language, you're only adding fuel to the fire. You're making things worse. It goes back to what I said earlier. You never come down to their level. What you want to do is avoid using language that implies that the customer is wrong. They may be wrong 1,000,000%. But you don't want to tell them that up front. Instead, you need to keep continuing to ensure that they're being served properly, no matter how angry they are. Even the angry, ugliest customers have to be treated like royalty up to a certain point. I would say once they start making threats to you, threats of bodily harm, then that's when they cross the line. But until they cross that line, you have to treat them like royalty and do whatever you can to make sure that their problem is rectified. Imagine that once you get their problem solved immediately, right there on the spot, they're going to go from being angry to being overjoyed, and they'll possibly leave your store a nice 5-star review. I've seen this before many times where customers will upgrade their 1-star review to a 5-star simply because their problem was solved so easily by a wonderful employee who took the matter into their own hands.
Unfortunately, this customer, her prescription could not be filled until much later on, but I had actually requested by the store manager, I asked him, I was like, can I just go home? I can't work. I cannot work today. This is just... So I ended up leaving early, about 2.5 hours into my shift. This happened. I just left for the day. He was able to give me the rest of the day off. He understood where I was coming from. Both him, the store manager, and the pharmacy manager both understood. Unfortunately, we could not fill that woman's prescription that day. I don't know what happened in the future. When her prescription actually was filled. However, no, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, it is horrible that, it has to come to that for customers. I remember somebody told me after I had explained the situation to this particular person, they said, you know what I would have done differently, Dana? I would have waited until they were done yelling at you. And then I would have said, do you feel better? Do you feel better now that you yelled at me? Now that you got that off your chest? But do so in a calm, cool, collective tone. Do you feel better now? Do you feel better that you yelled at me? Like it's my fault that your prescription was not ready. Do you feel better?
Some people do actually feel better after they yell at someone because they vented their issue and got it off their chest, but that doesn't make their behavior right. But it does help cool them down. You may notice with some people, after they've yelled at you over something, then they're talking in a much calmer voice because they've let their anger burn off.
Or they've apologized as well.
Right.
They've also apologized for yelling at you. I've noticed that on my end as well in terms of customers yelling at me. And then it was like I just have a look of horror in my face because of my disability. I don't like being yelled at, and I don't think anyone likes being yelled at, but I really do take things personally. So I actually have a look of horror on my face. And when they realize that they're yelling at me and I have this look of horror, they immediately stop and say, oh my God, I'm so sorry I just yelled at you. I am so sorry I yelled at you.
Some people are not that kind-hearted when they realize that their yelling has hurt somebody or hurt somebody's feelings. Some people feel, and this is especially true for people in positions of authority, that they feel that when they yell at someone, it makes them look more superior and that it reminds their subordinates that they're the ones in charge. And let me tell you, that type of mindset is the reason why I don't work for anybody anymore. I got tired of that. I've had many bosses who were just basically the way I described them. I work for myself now because I like to control what I do. I don't like it when somebody's always telling me what to do, especially if they're always raising their voice over the most trivial of things. So that led to me becoming a business owner.
All the more power to you, Christian.
Right?
All the more power to you.
I can't say that I have never yelled at anyone before. That would be a lie. I've yelled at hundreds of people in my life, but it was always for a justified reason. It was never for these stupid reasons these customers give. Remember, these customers don't know you. They don't know what you go through every day to make sure that they are happy. So anytime they yell at you, it's all based on presumption. It's all based on narcissism because they think they know how to do your job better than you know how to do it, even though they have never once worked in your position a day in their life.
Well, if they know how to do my job, they can definitely do my job for me. I don't mind.
Yeah.
But I don't think they would understand how to do my job because they don't know my job.
Exactly.
They just think they know my job, but they don't.
Most of these so-called Karens, that's how they are. They think they know everything better than everybody else, and that's why they get all iffy when they feel that they're not being served properly. One of the biggest ways to solve an angry customer's problem isn't always the easiest or even feasible at some point. But if you can simply jump in and resolve the issue that they're facing, which is easier said than done, by the way, in some cases, you've turned their frown into a smile. If you can resolve their issue on the spot, they're not going to be yelling at you anymore. Now, the best thing to do is ask questions. When you know that they're angry and they're willing to talk to you and hear you out, ask questions. Get to know as much information as you can about the problem that they are facing. Think about if there are any alternatives or workarounds to solve their problem. Is there anything that you can do within your power to satisfy their needs? And if there's nothing you can do, be honest with them. Tell them that you can't personally handle this issue, but you'll be glad to find somebody who can. Just as you said earlier, we can't stress that enough because there is going to be somebody on your team or within your organization that will be able to help that customer. If you can't handle it personally, then find somebody who will. Your manager will always be the first person to help you find someone who can take care of this awful customer.
And on that particular situation on the phone that I mentioned before with the customer who I could not help, unfortunately the lead for order pickup deliver, the direct supervisor had off that day. This was a Saturday. But the front end manager used to be a shop right from home lead, which is now called order pickup deliver. And I said, I could possibly try to ask my front end manager to see if he can help you. Would you be okay if I put you on a brief hold and have him help you out if he's able to? She said, yeah, that's fine. It's still a little snarky, but she said, yeah, that's fine. So I parked the call so I could put an extension to her call, and I went over to my front end manager and I said, look, this customer on X extension has an issue that I cannot resolve and I tried to help this customer as best as I can, but I'm not able to. This is what happened. This is the situation. Are you able to help me? And he said, let me see what I can do. So he then took the call. Thankfully, he was able to resolve the situation better than I could, because I'm not a manager. I'm just a part-time associate. I don't know shop right from home, order, pick up, deliver now with the call. I don't know that system 100% throughout, all throughout this system. I don't know what to do. There is only so much I know. I have to direct it to somebody who knows a lot more than I do about the situation. And in this case, thankfully, the front-end manager knew and knows the system because he used to be the lead, the direct supervisor of that department at a different location nonetheless, but still, he knows the system.
That's why collaboration is key. There is no I in team. The way you handled the situation and the way that you were able to get another employee to step in and tackle the issue is a textbook example of how to handle a customer who has a unique problem that you personally cannot take care of, but you know somebody else can. I can't stress enough the importance of collaboration among an organization. There is power in synergy, especially when you know that the resources are there. We thank you very much for listening to this episode of the CDG BizCast. In part 2, our conversation